Welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book main study. This week, I'm pleased to introduce Mags D, who has kindly agreed to come and share for us. Mags, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Steph and all the gang, for your service every day at this meeting. A big welcome to any newcomers. It's great to have you with us. You might hear in the rooms that, they tell us here anyway in the part of the world that I live, keep coming back. I always say, don't just keep coming back, just stay. So if this is your first meeting or you're returning, please just stay. There may be something here that will spark something inside you that will enable you to start and maintain your journey in this fellowship to ensure that you have freedom from drugs and alcohol and full-blown recovery. Because let me tell you from my own personal experience, sitting in the rooms doing nothing about a program of recovery and getting a little bit of relief for a short period of time is like purgatory. You're either all in or you're all out. The hokey cokey approach, as I call it, one foot in, one foot out, shake it all about, is the most painful way of trying to get to full-blown recovery. So yeah, just highlighting that for anybody that's listening to this recording as well. This might be your first introduction to CA and you might be thinking, what is this person talking about? But it's important that we establish the fact that when you come to a fellowship like this to overcome your addiction, that there are a set of principles that must be followed in order for you to attain that full-blown recovery. That being, get a sponsor, get a big book and work the steps. Have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. That's how the spiritual awakening happens. So if you're not working the book with a sponsor, the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps won't happen. It's as simple as that. I have established the fact through my own bitter experience that having a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps is the easier, softer way. And I complicated the life out of it by trying to do everything but. So my service over the course of the next number of weeks and months is to take you line by line through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the literature that we use, and it is the only place that you will find the program of recovery, the 164 pages. There is other literature available. I encourage people to read other literature, but your program of action and your program of recovery will only be found in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So before we get into the pages of the doctor's opinion, that's where we're starting today. I am so excited about this. Over the last couple of weeks, we've gone through the front cover page, the preface, all of those forwards to get to this point where we have now landed. We know last week we talked a little bit about step one because it actually starts in the forward to the second edition, where we begin to talk about the hopelessness, the powerlessness and the requirement for willingness in your step one. Before we dive into that, let's just take a moment. And even if you don't have a God in your life and you don't know what all of this God thing is that we're talking about, don't be concerned about that. Get used to the fact that we are going to talk about God, but it will become the God of your own understanding, which will be explained to you over the course of the next number of weeks and months. But for now, in order for you to get as much out of this session as you possibly can, let's just take a moment to ask God to please set aside everything I think I know about myself and what is going to keep me sober, so that I can have an open mind and a new experience with everything, and especially you, God. Please show me the truth. So I work from a book that doesn't have any markings in it. I'm just reading to you as the pages are set out. I don't have any markings. I don't have any highlights. I don't have any definitions or anything like that. And the reason why I share that with you is because every time I open the book at a meeting or with a sponsee, I want to have a new experience with God. So I'm passing on to you right now what's coming and what is being given to me in this session, in this moment. Okay. Because my experience of the book yesterday with somebody would be very different from what has been provided to me today in this session. Okay. And what I will say is I'll put my details in the chat at the end of the meeting. If anybody wishes to reach out to get in touch for any clarification or anything like that. I will only be given the clarity from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and nothing else. So if you want to get into a discussion and a debate about anything that is outside of the book, I won't be entering into those windy arguments. I've only got Alcoholics Anonymous to give you, nothing else. So let's get into it. The doctor's opinion. It's on page XXV. The words at the beginning of it, after the title, are the words written by Bill W. in the first 100 that wrote the book. And I'm sure there's a few doctors on here. I'm not a doctor. I have no medical qualifications. But what I do have is my own experience of these steps. So I'm not going to give you a medical opinion. I'm going to give you the doctor's opinion from the book and nothing else. And it was really important for me to emphasize that as a sponsor. I'm armed with the facts about myself, which is how alcohol was removed from my life, having had this spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. So the titles of the chapters are actually very important in and of themselves. We must not skip over those. So what is the doctor's opinion? What does a doctor's opinion mean? When you go to see a doctor, any medical doctor, their job is to provide you with a formal expression of their professional judgment. That's what a doctor gives you. And if you go for a second opinion because you don't agree with the first opinion, the second opinion is still going to be a formal expression of their professional judgment. That's their job. Okay. The words of Bill W. We of Alcoholics Anonymous. Big important point here. I would circle that we. When you hear this read out in the rooms, you sometimes hear people saying we, the we that they're referring to here basically is the we who wrote the book. So when you hear this read out in the rooms like I'm reading it now, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery. Circle that word as well, I would. Recovery. You're going to hear it a lot. Full-blown recovery is what you're going to get if you follow the clear-cut directions. But the we of Alcoholics Anonymous are the people that wrote this book. They're not every Tom, Dick and Harry sitting in this room. Because not every Tom, Dick and Harry in this room has had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, has a sponsor, and may not even be an addict or an alcoholic. They might just be a heavy drinker. They might use occasionally, but they may be very different people. And the point of us working our step one with a sponsor is to establish the fact that we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. So when I talk about your step one right now, as we're going through these pages, when you're talking about having an open mind, you're asking yourself as you turn these pages, is this me? Is this me? Is this me? With my sponsees, I'm saying to them, does this ring a bell? Is this you? Is this you? Is this you? Emphasizing the fact that they have to admit to themselves, they have to let in the idea that they are an addict or an alcoholic. We must remember that it's not up to us to convince anybody that they are. They must be convinced themselves. And the word convinced means to be moved by the evidence. So a person needs to be moved by the evidence. They need to be convinced themselves. And the only way that they can become convinced and moved by the evidence is turning these pages and following the masterly detail. So convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and, get this, witnessed a return to health. Witnessed a return to health. Addiction is the only illness where you actually, through this process, are better than you were before. My mum had cancer, and all she ever wanted was to get back to her original health. That's all she wanted to do with chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and all of that. She just wanted to get back to her original health. That's not what happens with us addicts. Our lives are recreated and we have an even better life than before. And that's a cast iron guarantee if you do that. But this is what this thing is suggesting. So this is important, these three little lines. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specialising in alcoholic and drug addiction gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. Like, pay attention to those words. He's well known, happy days, but he's the chief physician. And he's the chief physician at Towns Hospital in New York back in the day. A nationally prominent hospital in the US. Who specialised in alcohol and drug addiction. And the reason why I emphasise these three words is this is not some little blow-in doctor that's given his formal expression of his professional judgment. This wonderful gentleman who had set out in the foreword to the second edition talks about the fact that, you know, he's a medical saint in our eyes in these fellowships, because had he not written the two little letters that we're going to go through, God knows where we would be right now. His professional judgment is so incredibly important to understand our powerlessness. This is his credentials. By the time he wrote the first letter, he had 40 years experience of specialist work with drug addicts and alcoholics. 40 years. He had already treated 41,000 of us. So the probability of what he's saying is pretty high here. Again, he's not some blow-in doctor that's just come out of university or college. And I'm not suggesting that anybody that is just out of university and college is just a blow-in. Obviously, they have lots of experience. Don't be calling me about that after the meeting. I mean it with the greatest amount of respect. So we now move into the words of Dr. Silkworth, this amazing medical person, and who really genuinely is a saint. So to whom it may concern, he's sending this to everybody. He's sending this to the medical fraternity. He's given the letter to Alcoholics Anonymous. But anybody's reading this book, if you think about the fact the chapters at the back are to the employer, to the family afterwards, the chapter to the wives, etc., to whom it may concern, this is for anybody that needs to understand somebody with an addiction. So he emphasises his credentials here. I've specialised in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. He's letting everybody know. I know what I'm talking about here. And then he goes on to talk about our friend Bill W. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, this is important, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. You're going to hear that word hopeless over and over and over again. Hopeless means beyond medical aid in this book. If you're sitting here and you're wanting to understand, you have a progressive illness that no medical practitioner can solve for you. There is no treatment. There is no pill. There is no medicine. There is no psychiatrist. There is no psychologist. There's no addiction specialist that can help you. There's no treatment facility that can help you. They can give you a good grounding. My journey was, I had to be locked up in a treatment facility for 3.5 months because I couldn't get a breath away from my addiction. But that was the platform and the foundation in order for me then to come out and do this, Alcoholics Anonymous. Had I not done this, I do not want to even think about where I would be right now. So yes, rehab might have been part of your journey, might become part of your journey, but it is not the solution in and of itself. We know that the 3 sides of the triangle, that you need your 12 steps, you need your unity, you need your fellowship. This is all about unity, service, recovery. Those three sides of the triangle. So he goes on to say what happened with Bill W. when he treated him. In the course of his third treatment, so that's important, linked to the point that I said before, he kept going to the hospital. In the course of his third treatment, so the rehab, the hospital didn't help him the first two times. But in the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery, i.e. a STEP program. And get this, I love this line. This is so important. Here where I live, and you'll hear it in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous or CA perhaps, I don't know, and it might be a sweeping generalisation, but certainly I hear it regularly. Oh, the word sponsorship isn't mentioned in the Big Book. Well, if you've listened to the previous recordings, you'll know why it isn't included within the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because the people that wrote the book didn't even understand that they were called sponsors. It was the little receptionist in the hospital. When they left Dr. Silkworth, she would complete a little form and release the patient to somebody from Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was that little nurse who called us sponsors. They didn't even know they were called that. So just be clear about the fact that these next couple of lines, we are on the first page, XXV, and they are already talking about the importance of carrying this message to another addict. So as part of his rehabilitation, I do 12-step work because I'm an alcoholic addict, not because you are. It's part of my rehabilitation. It's part of your rehabilitation. Now, it's a win-win situation that when I give this away to people, they get it and then they pass it on. It's a win-win situation for them and their sponsees. But we do this because we're the addict, not because everybody else is. Because if I'm not doing this 12-step, carrying the message and sponsorship, intensive work, one alcoholic with another, then I'm not taking the prescription that I require for my illness. So as part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. You'll hear this in the rooms all the time. There's no musts in AA. Is that right? Because there's one right there. Must. Must means must by definition. It's not if, it's not but, it's not maybe. You must do likewise with still others. You have to sponsor. You have to carry this message. If you're sitting in this room having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, and you're not sitting with somebody else with a big book giving this away, what are you doing with your time? I understand that hosting meetings, co-hosting meetings and speaking at meetings and, doing the readings and being of service in so many ways, but intensive work, one alcoholic with another, is where you grow. It's where you grow spiritually. And I'm going to point out that to you when we get to that point in the book. I'll try my very best never to jump forward in the pages as much as I can. There's one particular point where we do, because it's a clear-cut direction. But with my sponsees, I always say to them, we grow where we're planted. So I'll only point things out to you when we get to them as much as I can. So isn't that interesting? You must do likewise. Keep that word must in your mind as we go through here, because it comes up 52 times actually. So whoever said there's no musts in AA, that's not right. And I'm just here to point out the truth of Alcoholics Anonymous. The traditions would teach us that, I've got the right to be right and I've got the right to be wrong and all of that. We are respectful and tolerant and loving of other people's opinions, shortcomings and viewpoints. There's no doubt about that. But when anybody asks me or says to me that there's no must in AA, I will point out the fact that absolutely that's incorrect. And I'll show you where the 52 times are that it's mentioned. And I'm not being obtuse. I'm just doing what my job is, to carry this message. So this has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. Carrying the message has become the basis of the rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. Without sponsorship, we wouldn't be here now. Over 90 years, that is what has kept the fellowship alive. In CA, over the last 20 years, sponsorship is what has kept the fellowship alive. Because if I don't pass this on, then the people that don't even know they need it, where are they going to get the solution from? Get this man and over 100 others appear to have recovered. I'm never recovered is what you hear in the room sometimes. I'm never recovered. You're never recovered. You're always recovering. Well, there you go. This man and 100 others have recovered. Past tense doesn't exist anymore. And again, that word is mentioned 17 times in the book, and I'll point it out to you as we go along. I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. Everything else had failed completely. And then they did this and something changed. They recovered. This next little line is very wordy. It's quite an academic line, I think. But I'll read it and I'll go over it just to kind of give it a little bit more of a today's context. So these facts, i.e. that these people have recovered through impressing upon one alcoholic, one addict to another, the solution that they have, these facts appear to be of extreme medical importance. Extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. We learnt last week about the word remedy and the fact that that is something that is used to set right an undesirable situation, to resolve an undesirable situation. And basically what that line is saying is these people have changed the history of alcoholism. These people have changed the history of addiction with the solution that they have. And get this line. Oh my God, this last line in this first letter is powerful. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Now, the reason why that line is so critically important is because I cannot rely absolutely on many, many things that people say about themselves in the rooms. Because again, I don't know whether they're actually admitted that they're an alcoholic addict, that they have a sponsor, that they've had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. I can't rely on what people say in the room. But what I 100 million% can rely upon is in these 164 pages, these 100 men and women tell you the truth about how they recovered. And therefore, when we learn this and we share the truth, and when anybody comes to talk to me about the fact that, oh, well, I don't agree with what you're saying and whatever, I will bring them to the truth in the pages of the book. I will let them know. So if there's anything here that you think, well, that's not right, that's okay. That's okay. But please know that I'm sharing the truth from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's as simple as that. And don't get me wrong, if there is something that I do get incorrect, and let me know and I'll rectify that. But it's rare, genuinely it is rare, that I will use something outside of the book that would be incorrect, because my sponsor has brought me up in a way that I have to stay true to the fundamental spiritual principles that are set out in this book. That's why my recovery is a miracle. And it is just the most amazing way of living, because I do this. And this first letter, he signs it off, very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, MD, main medical director. When the book was first published, he didn't put his name or his credentials to the first letter. because he was a bit nervous himself. It was only a few hundred people that had started to become recovered. But as the mushrooming process took place, he had to put his name and his credentials to the letter to add depth and weight to the fact that his specialised work over 40 years with 41,000 people, believe what I'm saying because this is true. I'm watching these people before my very eyes recover, who have never had any ability to have a medical intervention that has worked for them. They've come through my doors and have been absolutely on their knees, hopeless beyond medical aid, and I have watched them recover in front of my very eyes. And that's what we see in these fellowships all the time. If people work, if people do the steps. I say it all the time, if you do the work, it works. If you don't, it won't. These next words are Bill W.'s words again. So the physician, who, at our request, they asked him to write these letters to add the depth and weight to their message because they were so convinced by the message, but they needed somebody with medical help to be able to confirm that we're not talking baloney here. This is what the expert has to say. So he gave us this letter, has been kind enough to enlarge his views in another statement which follows. And in this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must, there we go again, believe. That the body of the alcoholic addict is quite as abnormal as the mind. What Bill is alluding to here, or pointing us towards, is that our bodies are different from normal people. You must believe this. And we're going to help you come to understand why your body is different and your body reacts abnormally to these substances, whatever they are, as well as the fact that there's something with regards to the abnormality of our minds. But in the first instance, we're talking about the physical here. And he's talking here as the alcoholic. It did not satisfy us to be told. Imagine telling us it didn't satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent. In fact, to a considerable extent with some of us. Of course they are. I'm an outright mental defective. Let me tell you, I 100% I am. I was totally and utterly maladjusted to life. And believe me, full flight from reality. That used to be the way that I lived. 100%. But get this, we are sure that our bodies, the physical side of our illness, were sickened as well. And I love this line. It is so incredibly important in our belief. Any picture of the alcoholic addict which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. The number of rooms that I sit in, honest to goodness, the number of rooms that I sit in, and they do not talk about the allergy. They do not talk about the physical side of our illness. They talk about everything but. They talk about the ism. They talk about the I, self, me. They talk about their bad days. They talk about the washing machine breaking down. They talk about everything but the physical allergy. How are we to help the newcomer that crosses our door if we don't talk to them about step one in the first instance? The powerlessness, physically, mentally, and how our lives have become unmanageable. My responsibility as a sponsor and a member of this fellowship is to help you understand in the first instance that you've got a progressive illness. You are going to die if you do not have the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. It tells us in working with others, we have to talk about the fatal malady. We have to talk about the hopelessness. The hope does come But in the first instance, the clear-cut directions tell me to talk about the fatal malady and the hopelessness and the powerlessness of this illness. So here's the thing, just as a little point of clarity, the doctor has a theory. So he has this little hypothesis that we have an allergy. And that hypothesis, that theory, interests us, addicts. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. So as laymen, if I'm talking to my sister and my brother about the fact that I have an allergy and that's why I did what I did for all of the years before I became recovered, they really would look at me strangely. They would not understand the allergy. They would not understand it. And why do they need to? Because they're not one of us. They are the lay people that he's talking about here. That's why intensive work, one addict with another, is so incredibly important. Trying to explain this to my sister and brother, they'd be like, aye, she's on one. She's on one. But to us, his explanation makes sense. There's something different about us lot. And then he goes on to talk about this beautiful thing that we are all part of. Though we work our solution, there's that first word, the first time it's mentioned, solution, solution, solution. Though we work our solution on the spiritual as well as the altruistic plane, we favour hospitalisation for the alcoholic who's very jittery or befogged. So I don't work with somebody when they're under the influence. There's just no point. There is no point. They have to go and get the medical attention. They have to go to accident emergency. They have to get whatever medical attention they need. Even if I was a doctor, I wouldn't be telling them what to do medically. They need to go to the professionals. That's not my job. Really important to understand that. Nothing goes into the mind when we're not clear of mind. There's no point working with somebody. Okay? We get them the medical help. We send them to the medical help. We get the family to get them to the medical help. But the important thing here to point out is, yes, this is a spiritual program. It's not a religious program, so don't be put off by the God thing. We're going to teach you that. We're going to take your hand and put it into the hand of the God of your own understanding. But right now, we're in step one. You just need to understand your powerlessness and your hopelessness, specifically around the allergy just now. As well as the spiritual plane, we also have this altruistic thing that we do. That's basically how we give to others. This really beautiful, selfless way of living where we help each other out. Some people might say that it's self-sacrificing. So I sacrifice my time to help other people by being of service in this fellowship and by practicing these principles in all of my affairs outside of these fellowships. But what I've come to understand that it's not a sacrifice, That's why I don't necessarily use the word self-sacrifice, because it's not a sacrifice. It's the most beautiful way of living that has been given to me and many, many others. And it's a way of living that genuinely, as the book says, becomes even more indescribably wonderful as time passes. I'm not sacrificing anything in my life to have a peace of mind that is so priceless that you can't even describe. So, more often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached. Your brain has to be cleared. It has to be cleared. And note that word approached. It is okay for me to approach someone to say, I have what you need. I've had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. I can help you. When do you want to get started? Some people, you hear some people saying, oh God, look at her. She's got a massive ego. No, I haven't anymore. I work on that every single day. But I can approach someone. It's okay for me to say, I've got what you need. I've got the solution. Like it says, I've got a solution that works. So come with me. Let me take you by the hand. Place it in the hand of the God of your own understanding. And when this person is approached by somebody in whom the problem has been solved, look what happens. He has then a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. So get rid of all of what we're dealing with, the jitteriness, the befoggedness, get rid of all of that. Approach the individual. Right, when do you want to get started? Because we ain't hanging about. We then move back into Dr. Silkworth's words where he presents his second letter. Pay attention. It's so amazing. You probably think that I'm some crazy lunatic, the way that I'm talking on a Saturday morning every week. My God. I love this paragraph. And the reason why I pay attention to this, because this statement is the doctor's opinion. So he has a theory that we have an allergy and that our bodies are abnormal. But this statement is his professional judgment. The subject presented in this book seems to be of paramount importance. Paramount meaning supreme. Paramount meaning more important than anything else. So the subject presented in this book seems to be of more importance than anything else to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. That is his professional judgment and doctor's opinion. So why would we sit in the rooms not talking about this solution? If that is what is presented in this book, what are we doing? If you haven't got a sponsor and a big book, what are we doing? Because the solution that will solve your problem is presented in this book. You are not going to find it anywhere else, people. I don't know how much more I can emphasize that. This is why it's so incredibly important to get a sponsor who will take you through the thread that runs through the 164 pages. And the reason why he's saying this, I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. His credibility, his credentials go before him. This man knows what he's talking about. And I can tell you now from my own bitter experience, what he is talking about has come true in my life. 1,000,000%. I'm going to read this paragraph, this next one. I'm going to read it once and then I'm going to read it again. Because the language that he uses in here is again quite academic. I think anyway. I'm not the sharpest tool in the box. I find it quite academic. But he had to use this language to be able to get the buy-in from his own, medical profession. In the first instance, when I read it, he had to use medical phrases to get buy-in from other medical people. So there was therefore a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterly detail in these pages. Masterly detail meaning expertly. It's dealt with expertly. The first 100 knew what they were talking about, and they expertly do this. Laser precision in the words that they use so that we can be convinced of the progressive illness that we have. So here's the paragraph. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. What does that mean? When I read this by myself, I was like, yeah, whatever. Maybe you didn't have that reaction. But set aside every single thing you think you know if you haven't heard this paragraph before and have this new experience with God. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of spiritual experience was of urgent importance to alcoholics. But the spiritual application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we doctors are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of God that lie outside our man-made knowledge. This power must come from a power that is greater than yourself. This doctor is acknowledging here he can't help us. This doctor is confirming that other doctors can't help us. He is confirming that you need this spiritual experience. But had he presented the word spiritual experience, people would have thought he was a bit crazy. Because he's the guy that's been doing this for 40 years and he's telling us that his stuff can't work. This wonderful, gentle man had such conviction in what the first 100 men and women were doing that he chose to add his depth and weight to help us. And the humility of this guy as we go through the rest of this letter is just so incredibly powerful. He puts his hands up on several occasions and says, I can't help you, but these people can. That's the reality of your sitting in this room today. If there's somebody in here that doesn't know what to do, doesn't know where to go, you're desperate, you're on your knees, whatever the case may be, or you've tried over and over and over again to do everything but the big book, then give yourself a break. Give yourself a break and do this. He goes on again then to talk about Bill W. Many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital. And while here, he acquired some ideas. Get this, people. He acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. What's this whole nonsense that we hear in the rooms of, oh, I've got to wait a while before I start sponsoring? What are you waiting for? We put it into practical application at once, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. We pick up the book, we get a sponsee, we start the program. The only way I learn this stuff is by doing it. The only reason why I know this stuff is that I do it. The only reason why I learn is by giving it away. I get more back when I give it away. I didn't know this stuff when I first opened my book with my first sponsee. But all I'm there to do is to share my own experience as to what happened with me. That's it. That is it. And then one came, and then another came, and then another came, then another. And I don't want to even think about the numbers now, because the numbers are not what's important. Because all I'm doing is sitting one person to another intensive work, because you're the center of my universe, one-on-one. There's nothing else exists when I'm sitting with Kate in Sydney, Australia. There's nothing else that exists. Just our time together, setting aside every single thing I think I know. And God teaches me all the time, gives me new information. Even now, there's parts of this book where I'm looking, oh my God, I've never seen that line before. Oh, don't know where that's come from. My sponsees that are on here will be saying, oh, she never told me that. Well, I didn't tell you it. Don't be worried, because it wasn't given to me. It wasn't that I was hiding it and keeping it for the penguins. No, it just wasn't given to me in our session. You haven't lost out. Don't worry. You're not going to relapse. Don't be worrying. I always go to the extreme. So put it into practical application at once. Start passing it on. Come on, guys. We've got a job to do. We work for God. So later, and you know what the later was? The later, 4 hours later. So he had his experience. 4 hours later, he's running about the place. He requested the privilege. And so, oh my goodness, it is such a privilege to do this work with other people. Such a privilege. So 4 hours later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here. And with some misgiving, we consented, and thank God they did. Thank God they consented to him passing on this message. Because what happens is this. And this next few lines start to talk about the fellowship of recovered alcoholics, addicts. This is what happens when you recover. This is what we do. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. Miracles of healing is what it's talked about later on in We Agnostics. Miracles of healing. The unselfishness of these men, that altruistic approach that we've just talked about previously, as we have come to know them. The entire absence of profit. The only thing we do is our tradition 7, fully self-supporting. And their community spirit, the fellowship, the unity, is indeed inspiring. And get this, guys, humility. Get this, is indeed inspiring to one who has laboured long and wearily in this alcoholic field. He's exhausted working with us lot, and he's now coming and telling us, oh, I can't even help you. But these people, they believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. That's your other death threat. We know in the foreword to the 2nd edition, they talked about the grave nature of alcoholism. I pointed that out to you last week. The grave nature of alcohol, your first death threat. Here's your next one. And it's so true. This program, this opportunity, this action, recovery, practice, practical application pulls us back from the gates of death. And he can't. No doctor can. And again, he emphasizes the point, of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor. And this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. Again, he's just going into the point now that don't deal with them when they're under the influence. Get them the medical help, clear their mind. I'm going to finish in this paragraph, Julian, if this is okay, because I've gone into the red there. Is that okay? So to be of maximum benefit, get your medical help if you need it before you start this work. This paragraph is where they talk about the allergy, and I'm going to finish on this one. Pay attention to this. This is where we talk about the actual allergy and the impact it has on us, and this is so beautiful, so powerful, and will bring alive, I hope, something for the newcomer this morning that will really resonate and perhaps give you the opportunity to just let this percolate through over the course of the weekend. Just let this drip in. So we believe, the doctors, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. The word chronic just means an habitual drinker. I used to think chronic meant somebody lying on a park bench or, sitting on the streets and all of that. That I'm a chronic alcoholic because I have a drink habit, But what happens is that there's something that happens when I put the substance into my body, which manifests itself in something else. The manifestation is the effect that the alcohol has on me. Okay. So the manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. I am different from everybody else that doesn't have this allergy. I react completely and utterly abnormally to this really normal substance. So I am abnormal physically, and I am abnormal mentally. And this program helps me overcome both of those. These allergic types can never, see those words, never safely use alcohol in any form at all. See how precise they are, and so important to emphasize these words that you can never safely use in any form at all, ever, 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 ever again. So if you think you're coming in here to control, knock that one on the head. Set that all aside. Set aside every single thing you think you know, because you think you're coming in here to control it. It ain't happening, people. And once you having formed the habit and found that they cannot break it, once having lost all self-confidence, their reliance upon human things, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. But here's the good news. You solve the addiction problem, all your other problems will be solved. You might think you have piles and piles of problems right now. Well, you do. But once you recover, all your problems are solved. Not just the addiction, your relationship problems, your work problems, your money problems, your spiritual malady, your interactions with anybody on this planet. All your problems are solved. But read that paragraph through. Let that percolate. You are abnormal. You react completely differently from somebody who doesn't have this allergy. And you can never, ever, ever safely use ever again. That's what we're trying to establish over the course of the next lot of weeks. Your powerlessness, your hopelessness beyond medical aid. I think I'll leave it at that for now, Julian. Hope it's been helpful.